sec, though. Solange Mougin is joining us on the programme now. We're talking about Sudan at the beginning of the paper review. Tens of thousands of protesters coming out to call for civilian transitional government. It's the largest protest, isn't it, Solange, since a brutal crackdown last month?
Yeah, before the protest, the opposition was calling it the March of Millions, a strong sign of their defiance that they're not going to give up until they get a civilian-led government. And as the Middle East Eye reminds us, protesting in Sudan is more than ever an act of courage. Several people were killed Sunday with live fire breaking out during the protests. And for the site, they say the country remains more than ever at a crossroads and, quote, on the edge of confrontation. For the Sudanese paper, Sudan Vision, which has in the past largely held a sort of pro-military council stance, they blame the current tensions on the protesters and the opposition having, quote, unrealistic and exaggerated political aspirations, end quote. But in its editorial, the Sudanese paper is also a bit more positive in its analysis of the protest movement, saying, quote, the revolution created great achievements and that their aspired change cannot happen overnight. So they sort of leave the door open there.
Talks between the military council and the protesters, of course, still at a standstill, have been for some time, really. The Financial Times, though, tells us that the council is still hard at work, kind of trying to establish its influence here.
Yeah, the Financial Times tells us that the head of the feared militia, who's known as Hemeti, has, while telling the protesters to remain patient, been working hard to gain influence internationally. He hired in May, to the tune of $6 million, a Canadian lobbying group that has experience improving the images of its clients and setting up meetings with world leaders. The terms of this contract with Dickens and Madsen is to try and secure a meeting with Donald Trump, to get support of Libya's military leader, and to get free wheat from Russia. So while the Sudanese continue to protest, behind the scenes, the military council is also working to maintain their hold on power.
Let's move to Italy. This next story, another dispute over migrants is underway there. Now, this is between Rome and Germany. It's after a humanitarian ship, the Sea-Watch 3, made a forced landing on Lampedusa.
Yeah, and the skipper of the ship, whose name is Carola Rackety, said her decision to force dock her ship was one not of violence, but of disobedience to avert a human tragedy for the 40 migrants on board her rescue vessel. And in doing so, during the docking, she accidentally rammed a police force vessel. And the 31-year-old captain was then, as you can see on the cover of Corriere della Sera, put under house arrest. She has repeatedly apologized for the risky docking maneuver, saying that it was a mistake. Now, she risks 3 to 10 years in jail, and already in Germany, over €1 million have been raised through crowdfunding to help her with her legal fees. But as the cover of the Italian daily La Repubblica reminds us, the incident is creating tension between Rome and Berlin. And as for the German paper, Frankfurter Allgemeiner, the incident has been fodder for the far-right government to up their rhetoric from a criminal act on Saturday to a war act on Sunday. The heart of the issue, though, for Der Spiegel is an absence of comprehensive humanitarian protocol for refugees. And the paper's English site says, quote, Europe is a fortress without a gate.
Let's turn to a video that's gone viral now. We're going to see it, of course. Solange will show it to us. It's of Ivanka Trump at the G20 summit.
Yeah, as Huffington Post tells us, the video, which was actually released by the Elysee Palace, surprisingly enough, it was, quote, a super awkward moment as the first daughter tried to interject into a discussion between Macron, Theresa May, and Christine Lagarde. Let's take a look, but I recommend looking at Christine Lagarde's eyes, as they are pretty telling.
Yes, but there's a lot of social justice. And
it's all, yeah.
As soon as you start talking about the economic aspect of it, though,
yeah,
a lot of people start listening who wouldn't otherwise listen.
And the same with the defense side of it.
Yeah.
In terms of the whole sort of business. It's been very male-dominated. So.
Needless,
puzzled, I think.
Yes,
is
a bit puzzled. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Needless to say, Democrats slammed Ivanka on Twitter. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's quite outspoken in the U.S., wrote, being someone's daughter is not a career qualification, and the U.S.'s diplomatic standing is hurt when, quote, the president phones it in. which is essentially the same point that the Washington Post makes. It goes through all the examples of Ms. Trump's absence of diplomatic experience, including participating in what she called a surreal North Korea trip. And the paper says that now other countries are treating the American diplomatic corps and the U.S. essentially as a monarchy with a court and its princesses to court.
We should be watching those eyebrows very closely, of Christine Lagarde, that is, of course. Finally, from this lounge, a little something. This is about freak weather, isn't it? It's in Mexico.
Yeah, I've sort of gone from ice cream beauties to ice. As the Mexican daily Excelsior shows us, part of Guadalajara was hit with, get this, 1.5 meters of hail and ice.
That.
Yeah, it makes
Amazing,
amazing photographs.
Yeah.
Some 200 homes were damaged. Luckily, no one was hurt. A reminder that climate change and freak weather is upon us, but it does make great photos.
Imagine that in the studio. That would be incredible, wouldn't it? We'd be covering
up
the
here.
desk. Thanks so much, Solange Moujang, with the papers here on France 24.